It is NBA trade season, which means if you look around at wherever you get your NBA news, you're likely to see a bunch of crazy rumors. LeBron and Steph teaming up in Golden State, this star, that star, forcing their way out and creating a super team. A lot of these places are just lying to you. Not all of them. Jimmy Butler does have a real chance of getting traded to a couple of different teams. Same for guys like Zach Lavine, Nikola Vucevic, and Cam Johnson, among others. But let's just be honest, LeBron and Steph teaming up as the headline of your trade rumors post is going to get a lot more interest than Cam Johnson. But that doesn't change the fact that these trade rumors I'm about to share with you that have been floated by some legit places have an almost 0% chance of happening. First, let's start with the big one. LeBron to the Warriors, or really LeBron getting traded for the Lakers in general. I can understand the impulse and the desire to see LeBron on a different team and in a different situation, what is likely either his second to last or his last season in the NBA. There are situations that theoretically, from a basketball perspective, make sense for LeBron and teams that can also put together a decent trade package in return that makes sense for both teams. Houston is a great example. They have all of these pieces that they can either trade for LeBron or have this great environment around him. They can mix and match a bunch of different stuff. They have a ton of picks, and they are desperate for a perimeter creator, end of game guy. Whether you think LeBron is still that guy or not, there is a ready-made spot for LeBron on the Houston Rockets. And that presents a better opportunity for him to go and try and win a title this year or next year if he ends up in Houston. The other obvious one, and the one that gets floated out all the times in thumbnails and headlines, is LeBron and Steph teaming up in Golden State. This was a thing even before this season that people have wanted to see, and then we got to see them play together in the Olympics, and that just accelerated it. And again, there are trade packages you could put together that would make a little bit of sense for Golden State, and you could certainly argue that he has a better chance of winning a title with the Warriors than he does with the Lakers this season. But the reason this won't happen is very, very simple. LeBron runs the LA Lakers organization. He, a few months ago, got his son drafted by the team. Nobody else was going to draft him. And he got his choice for head coach hired by the Lakers. A guy that he was doing a podcast with is now the head coach of the basketball team. So one, if they were going to trade LeBron, he would be involved in that process. He would basically request it. They wouldn't just trade him out of nowhere because he basically runs the team. And two, why would he want to give up that position of power that he has within the organization? LeBron is the most influential player that any NBA organization has ever had. He has as much influence and power as any player in the history of the league has ever had. So why would he want to give that up? Even if you could certainly argue Houston, Golden State represent better winning basketball opportunities, even if you could argue that they have good trade packages in exchange for LeBron, why would he give that up? And like I said, it doesn't mean that there aren't trades that make sense. I'm sure you guys could put a ton of trades in the comments, and I encourage you to look at and say, hey, this is a trade for LeBron that actually makes sense. He could go win a title at this place, but it's just not happening. The next rumor is one that I had to look and check and keep going over because it just kind of blew my mind that he was even a possibility, and it's De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento. Now, the Kings are always liable to do something unexpected. Typically, when the Kings make a trade, when they make a move, it's one that we are not expecting. It's one that comes out of nowhere. And I understand that this has been a disappointing season for Sacramento. And when you combine that with the contract situation with De'Aaron Fox, it makes the possibility of a trade this year relatively likely at first. If you don't know what I'm talking about, De'Aaron Fox did not sign an extension this past offseason that he was eligible for because he wants to try and make himself a little bit more money, maybe make a couple of All-NBA teams and increase that number. And so right now, De'Aaron Fox is under contract for this season and next season, and that is it. He is a 2026 free agent, and obviously Sacramento is concerned, since he didn't sign the extension, that he might just leave for nothing. And there are some scenarios in which it would make sense for Sacramento to trade him to somewhere like, again, the Rockets, who continue to come up here, where they get some assets in exchange, they get some future picks. The Kings, unlike most of these other teams in the West, actually have most of their first round picks moving forward. And so if they got rid of De'Aaron Fox, got some assets, it could represent kind of a mini rebuild here, where they're able to not deal with the impending free agency of De'Aaron Fox in 2026, get some assets, trade some other guys, and rebuild. I don't understand that thought process at all. If we get to the offseason, De'Aaron Fox has had an awesome season, he's going to sign the extension. He's going to want to stay in Sacramento. If he doesn't, you still have a whole nother year to try and trade him. I don't understand the thought process of going backwards 3 steps and trading away De'Aaron Fox just because you've had a disappointing season. There are plenty of reasons why the season has been disappointing in Sacramento, defense chief among them, and you knew that when you went into the season, and you certainly knew that when you brought in DeMar DeRozan. There are still so many more avenues for improvement for Sacramento that I don't understand why all of a sudden they would just jump ship and trade away De'Aaron Fox. It would be interesting, and like I said, we've seen them do some unexpected things in the past, like trading away Tyrese Halliburton while he's still on a rookie rookie contract, but I just can't really see this one happening. Okay, these first two have been like, okay, I don't understand the reasoning for it. It seems like a very low chance. This next one is literally impossible. Jimmy Butler to the Phoenix Suns is just continually being thrown in our face and saying, this is going to happen, this could happen, this is a real legit possibility, and I don't understand it. Shams reported this, and then he got called out by Jimmy Butler's agent, and then Shams has continued to double down on this. Jimmy Butler going to the Phoenix Suns is a real possibility. No, it's not. Here's the bottom line. This is all you need to know about Jimmy Butler to the Suns. One of these things has to happen in order for Jimmy Butler to end up in Phoenix. The Heat would either have to want to take on the Bradley Beal contract, which is one of the worst contracts in all of sports, or they'd have to find a third team to take it, or Beal would have to want to be traded to Miami or to another team. He'd have to waive his no trade clause. Him and LeBron are the only two players in the entire league that have a no trade clause. Those two things, one of those has to happen for Jimmy Butler to end up in Phoenix. There is not a construction of this deal where Phoenix can add Jimmy Butler and his almost $50 million salary to their team unless Bradley Beal is in the deal. And again, one of the worst contracts in sports. No trade clause, massive number, still plenty of years left, not playing well, old, always injured. So you'd have to find a way to find some other random third team that's willing to take on the Beal money, and you'd have to get him to waive his no trade clause. And you can't really, the Phoenix is trying to contend this year. You can't really just go to Bradley Beal and say, hey, if we were to trade you to random team A, would you be willing to waive your no trade clause? No, you kind of just have to go for it. And then if he's like, no, I'm not, I don't want to get traded. I want to stay here in Phoenix and play with KD and Booker. Then you're like, oh, okay, just kidding. Sorry, we asked you about your no trade clause. There's no way to do it. I don't understand why this is being continually thrown in our face as a real possibility. I challenge you not only to find a way to make this happen, a way for Beal to go to a third team, but even if it's not a third team, I challenge you to find a construction of this deal where Miami would even say yes. There's like 4 different teams that you can find that they could send Jimmy Butler to and get some kind of asset in exchange and not have to deal with the Bradley Beal thing. It's not a real possibility. It's as if people were treating this like Bradley Beal from 5 years ago and he's a real legit asset. You can just swap him and Jimmy Butler and everything's fine. That's not what's happened. Speaking of Jimmy Butler, here's another crazy one. Jimmy Butler to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, the Cavs have been fantastic to start this season, and in theory, Butler on this Cavs team would be really cool. Obviously, you have to deal with the lack of floor spacing, but they've been looking for someone at that 2 to 3 spot for a while. They've got Max Strus, they've tried George Niang, they've got Okoro, they've got a bunch of guys they've tried to put at that spot. And if you could just add Jimmy Butler to this team, all of a sudden you have this lineup that, yeah, would lack a little bit of spacing or a lot of spacing, but it would be Garland, Mitchell, Butler, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. You've got a guy in Butler that's gone to the finals multiple times. Would be an awesome addition to this up-and-coming Cavs team. But here's the problem, and it's very similar to the Suns situation. Look at the contracts. Just look at the logistics of the deal. You can't put a trade together that doesn't involve Darius Garland. Like, Darius Garland would have to end up going to the Heat in any construction here. And for one, I don't think I would do that in the first place. Actually, I know I wouldn't. I'd rather have Darius Garland, that contract, that youth, in comparison to Jimmy Butler's age and injury history and contract. But also, the Cavs are awesome. They've been great to begin the year. Why would they want to change anything about this team, much less trading away Darius Garland? If there was a way where they had a couple of bigger contracts on the roster and they could keep their core 4 guys together, Mitchell, Garland, Allen, Mobley, and add Jimmy Butler, I'd be all for it. But the fact that this is being thrown out there as a possibility that the Cavs would even begin to consider Darius Garland plus some stuff in exchange for Jimmy Butler makes absolutely no sense to me. Speaking of things that make no sense, the Charlotte Hornets trading away LaMelo. I understand that not everybody is the biggest fan of LaMelo Ball. He certainly has plenty of flaws as a player. And in theory, I can understand the concept of LaMelo's healthy and having a good season. Let's capitalize on that. Let's trade that before it falls apart. We don't want to be the next team that has like a Zion situation on our hands. We have this guy that we know is talented. We have him on a long-term deal, but he's just never healthy. And LaMelo, although he's had some injury issues recently, had a really great start to the year, should be available, get some stuff, build around Brandon Miller, build around some of the younger guys, and everything will be fine. I don't understand that. What are you building towards if you're trading away LaMelo? Are you just rebuilding again in another 5 years because then you're going to trade away Brandon Miller when he gets a new contract? I don't understand why people were pretending like this LaMelo contract is some kind of massive issue for Charlotte. Who are they going out and signing in free agency anytime soon? Like, they're drafting young guys, signing them to big contracts when they're good, because that's what you do. Like, yeah, in theory, there's probably a value deal out there where they can get something in exchange for LaMelo and their roster's a little bit more lean moving forward, and maybe they just aren't a huge fan of LaMelo themselves. Maybe they don't think that he's a winning player. Maybe the new coach doesn't like him. All that's a real possibility, but the concept of trading LaMelo in the next 2 months before the trade deadline, I just don't understand. So there you have it. Don't believe every NBA trade rumor that you see.